Hey everyone, in this video, we're going to build a very simple investment calculator. And so as a disclaimer before I start, I'm not a finance guy. I'm definitely just a software engineer. So I'm not going to do any super advanced calculation. And there may be a better way to handle this. But for this video, we're focusing mainly on just the Django and how to build out this sort of thing. To get this working, I just kind of tried to reverse engineer calculators I found online. And these results seem to match. So it's good enough for this video. But I'm definitely not super into finance. So take that as it is, I guess. This is what we'll build in this video. We will give a simple calculator that lets us put in a starting amount, a number of years, a return rate, and then additional annual contribution. So in this case, we'll start with $100. We'll look at 10 years with a return rate of 10% with an additional contribution each year of $100. We calculate, and we'll get this little table here that shows us what we'll get after 10 years. After 10 years, it'll be $1,853 total in that account, and it breaks down year by year the total amount of interest earned over time, as well as the total over time. So you can see how much interest we gain over time versus how much of that total that actually is from this table. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I have a folder here open to create the file already, and I have my terminal window right here open as well. So first, I'll create a virtual environment, and I'm going to use virtual env. You can create one called env. You could use the python-m v-env command as well, or you can install virtual env. I'm on Linux, so I'll do a source env bin/activate. I think Windows, it's like script/activate, but you can look that up online. Now with that done, we have our environment right there. It's activated. We can go ahead and pip install Django. And then with Django installed here, once this finishes, we can run Django admin start project, give it a name. We'll call it investment calc. And we'll cd into investment calc. We'll run a Python 3 manage.py start app. And we'll call this one calculator. And now we should see we have our investment calc directory and our calculator directory as long as our manage.py. So this all set up, we should be ready to go. If I go back to my code editor here and I open up investment calc, we should have our settings here, and we have our views and everything inside of calculator. Okay, so first things first, we'll go into settings, and we're going to add our calculator app to the installed app. So calculator right there, like that. And now with that added and with everything else set up, let's go ahead and get started with this. So I'm going to start with creating the views. And we'll start with our basic get on the index page. So when we open up this thing right here, this form will show first. And this will be the get. Once we click calculate, that will send a post request. So we'll have a get method and a post method on our view. The get will show this form, and then the post will actually calculate the data and show us our table at the end. So we'll start with our get. And I'm going to use a class-based view for this. And we'll call this class-based view index. And we need to go ahead and import our generic view class. So from Django.views, import view. And this is just a very basic view class that gives us access to all different methods. We have a get method, we have a post method, a put, a delete, everything we need to send our typical HTTP requests. So in this case, if we want to handle a get request, we want to make sure we add a get method to our view, passing in self and request. And then along from this, we're going to have a post method, and this will allow us to handle a post request on this route or on this view here, and that will go here. So this one will be to render the form. So we need a few things here. Before we can do anything else, we need to actually create our form though. So inside of our calculator app here, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to save this as forms.py. And inside of forms.py, I'm going to go ahead and create a very basic form. So from Django, import forms. And then we'll do a class investment form, and we'll inherit from forms.form. And we're not using model form here because we don't have an actual model in our models.py. This is empty. We're not using this file at all. So we'll use just our generic form class. And then what we can do here is we can go ahead and just create instance variables on this class. So just put a variable name equals, and then a form field type, and that will build our form for us. So what we'll do here is we'll do starting amount, I guess real quick, just to make this clear, each of these form instance variables will map to these labels here. So we want to have one for starting amount, one for number of years, one for return rate, and one for the annual additional contribution. So for the starting amount, that will equal a forms.float field, which allows us to put integers or decimal numbers in there, which we'll need for our dollar amounts. We'll have a number of years equals forms.float field as well. And then we'll have a return rate equaling forms.float field as well. And finally, annual additional contribution equals forms.float field. Okay, so all we're using here are fields, but of course we have many other options you can choose from. I'll put the link to the Django documentation in the description. You can look at it there, and that will hopefully help you with any other field types you need, but they're all pretty straightforward. Their names usually help understand what they're doing. Okay, so now we have our form created. That's all we need to do to create our form. This will create a form with all these fields for us, and now we can go ahead and use it inside of here. So first we'll import it. So from.forms, import investment form. And then inside my get method here, I can do form equals investment form with nothing passed in. So with Django forms, we have like bounded forms and unbounded forms. In this case, it's an unbounded form because we don't have any data passed in here. You'll see what the other way looks like in our post method, but what this will do will just render an empty form for us. Now that we have the form rendered, now we have the form created, we can go ahead and put this, we can go ahead and render a template and adding this form variable into our template so we can render it there. So we'll do return render request, a template name, and then we will do our context. In this case, we'll set a form variable to our form, and so this will give us a variable called form inside our template that we can use to actually render this form. Okay. Now let's go ahead and just get our URL set up, and then we will just hopefully be able to show this form on the screen. So we'll go into our URL.py to create a route for this. And this will just go to our index page, so we can create a path of an empty string to mark this as the index page. I can go ahead and import up here from the top from calculator views import index, and then down here I can do index. And since this is a class-based view, we need to add as_view after our name of our view. And then finally we'll give it a name of just index. And we'll use this later on our back button. But this just gives us a better name to reference this path here. Okay, now we have a path added. We have our views created, our forms created. Let's go ahead and just test this out. So we'll open my terminal here, let's clear this out. I'll run a Python 3 manage.py migrate to run our initial migrations. And then I'll run Python manage.py run server to run the server. Back here, and this is all working. I just completely forgot to create our template, so we actually don't have anything showing on the page yet. So let's go ahead and create our template now. And you could change the template routes down here inside this template dirs field here, but for this example, to keep it as simple as possible, I'm going to keep it at the default route. And the default location for forms or for templates with Django is inside our app, we create a new folder. We call it templates. Inside of templates here, we create an additional folder and call it the name of our app again. So it's kind of redundant, but this is how Django does it by default. So inside of here, we can create a new file. And I'm going to create two files here. I'm going to create a base.html, and I'll create also a index.html. So what we'll do here is we'll generate a kind of a base template here in our base.html. We'll inherit from that in our index to kind of save us from writing code more than once. So I can go ahead and generate just a blank HTML document here. I'll change the title to investment calculator. And then inside of our body here, this will be pretty simple. All we need to do is add a Django template tag right here. So what we need to add is just a block content, and we'll end the block as well in block content. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take inside of all of our child templates here, we're we're going to go ahead and replace this line with our actual template code. So hopefully in a second here, you can see how that works. Let's jump into our index.html and see how we can do this. So what we'll do first is we'll extend our base template to say we want it to inherit from that template. Extends calculator / base.html. And then down here, we will do a block content, and we will do an end block content. So now anything we put inside of these two lines here will be replaced right in here. So really what we'll do is we'll take all of this and it'll just go in here, and this whole template here will be rendered on the page. So hopefully that makes sense. Now instead of here, let's go ahead and create a few divs in a form. So I'm gonna put a bunch of divs here, and I'll use these in a second to create our styles when we add Bootstrap, but for now, we're not gonna worry about our styles. I'm still gonna put all the HTML in how we need it. So we'll have two divs, and inside here I'll have an H1. This H1 will just say investment calculator. And then below here, we wanna go ahead and render a form. So do a form, add a method of post on it. I'm going to close off the tag right here. And now every form that has a post method on it, what we need to do is add a CSRF token. This is a cross-site request forgery token. It's just a security feature Django has built in. Just make sure you have this line here for any post request forms. And then finally, we can add in a template variable by using two curly braces. So these curly brace % signs are template tags. They're kind of built-in sort of reserved words in Django. So we have like content blocks. We have CSRF token extends, these different things. But double curly braces is how we put variables in. And the variables we have available will come from our views.py instead of our context. There's a few more available as well, but these are the ones we created inside of this dictionary right here. So we have access to this form value. So what we can do is inside the index.html here, we can just type form, and that should render our form that we created in our view. So it should find this investment form and just put that right here. Okay, perfect. Now with that done, the last thing you want to do is add a button so we actually submit this form. So we'll do a button, about a type of submit on that button, and we'll say calculate, and we'll close off that button tag. Okay, and that should be it. Let's come back to our page here and run this. Let's stop our server and try it again. So we'll go ahead and just stop the server, rerun it, come back and run this. Oh, I misspelled calculator, it looks like. So back inside of our views.py here, calculator, let's try that. And there we go. So now the form's there, does not look good, but the form is there. Just as a temporary thing to make it look a little bit better. It's still not gonna look good. Just to make it look a little better, what we can do is we can do a .as_p to wrap everything in p tags, and then I should put things on new lines. There we go. Okay, so now we have our form. It's all here. It doesn't do anything yet, but we at least see our form on the page. Now we'll come back and make this look better and look more pretty later, but for now, we'll leave it like this. Let's go ahead and go back into our views now and build up the post method. So when we hit calculate on this form, it will send a post request back to the same URL. And so this same URL will take us to the post method right here. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to get our form, but pass in the post data. So I talked about unbounded versus bounded forms, and this is what the difference is here. We can pass in request.post, and now this form value here will be this form, but it will have all the data that we submitted in these fields. All these fields here will then be submitted in the form inside this form here, and we can actually access them now inside of our view. So that's how we get user input from our forms inside of our view, so we can actually do something with it. First thing we want to do here is we want to hold a few different values, and we'll do some math. Now this math might get a little confusing. I checked, if I open up this link here, this is kind of what I was basing things off of. If we put in numbers here, change this to annual, 10 years, and we'll do 10%. You can see the total amount here. Oh, $100. Let's change that to $100 like that. You can see the total amounts over the years right here. This is what I based this math off of. I got it to match If there's any problems with it you find, or you have any suggestions, let me know. I can always make another additional video with improvements, but this is what I found, and it seems to work and it seems to match. But again, I'm not much of a finance guy, so I don't know a ton about that. I'm just a software engineer. But now but looking at this and looking at these numbers, we can go ahead and match this math in our view, and that's what I'm going to do now. So what we want to do first is make sure the form is valid. So we can do if form.isValid, and we'll run this if the form is valid. If not, it'll throw an error, but this way we can always add the check after if you wanted to. In this example, I'm not going to do that. But first, we want to check if the form is valid. Now that we've checked the form is valid, we want to hold a few different variables here. We want a total result variable, and we'll come back to this in a second. We want to hold a total interest. We want to hold a yearly results dictionary as well. So what we're going to do here is we're going to hold this total result, and this will hold our final value. Our total interest will keep track of the interest at the very end, and it will also be used to keep track of the interest year by year. So this will be the total interest up to that year will be saved in this value at that time. And this yearly results will just be a data structure here that will hold a few different values. It has to do with the total interest of that year. So really what we're trying to do is just keep track of everything on a year-by-year basis so we can show it in the table the correct way. If that doesn't make sense, I'll try to walk through this step by step and hopefully make more sense. But with that said, let's go ahead and get started writing this out. So our total result will always start being the amount we've initially deposited. So we can get that value by doing form.cleaned data. This will return a dictionary, and we can do starting amount. So this clean data is how we access form fields. It's a dictionary, and the key in the dictionary will be the same as our form variable. So all these variables here, these will be the keys inside of our clean data dictionary here. So this line right here will get the starting amount that we initially deposited. Total interest will start at 0. And so the first year, we don't have any interest until we've actually had time to get interest. So this will start as 0, and we'll keep our yearly results being an empty dictionary for now. Now, this next step, what we want to do is we're going to create a loop, and we're going to start from 1 all the way up to the last year that they put in. So in that form here, we can put a number of years. So if we put 10, we want to go from year 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 7, then 8, then 9, then 10, and then we'll stop. And that way we're doing this for every year that is inputted in. Now there are equations to get something after a certain amount of years, but instead of doing that, I'm just going to do a loop here. As long as you don't put a massive value in, it really shouldn't be an issue. And if you're worried about your users doing that, you can always add some form validation that would stop if it's over a certain amount. But to keep this video simple, I'm not going to worry about that here. So to do this, I'll create a for loop, create a variable I, and I'll use the range keyword to create a list from 1 to the final value. So we'll do a form.cleaned data, and then we want to add the number of years key, and this is number of years. This will return, and in that case, in the last example, it will return 10. Now this is exclusive though, so this will be 1 through 9 if this value is 10. So we need to go ahead and add 1 to that to make sure we get the final value as well. So this will be 1 to 11, but it's exclusive, so it'll be 1 to 10. Now that is fine, but the problem is here, this is a string. We want this to be an integer. So outside of this, I'm going to go ahead and just wrap this entire thing in a int here to cast it to an int. Okay, so now with that line, it's kind of long, but with that line done, we should have our loop going. Next step is to add our yearly results key. So the key in this case will always be the year number. So 1 through 10 in this example. So year I will equal an empty dictionary, and we'll use this to put our data in as we get it. Now we need to go ahead and calculate the interest. And then we want to go ahead and calculate, or we want to go ahead and add in the additional contribution. And then once we have that done, we want to go ahead and set yearly results. So all those values inside year results, so we can access it in our template. Then we want to go ahead and create our context, create context. And finally, once all that's done, we can go ahead and just render the template. So hopefully that makes sense. All we're doing is step by step what we need to do. We need to first figure out how much interest we gained this year. We want to add in any additional contribution that we made that year. We want to set these values in our yearly results so we can access it in our template. We'll create that context variable, and that context is just a dictionary like this. But this one's pretty big, so we'll create a separate variable for it. And then finally, we'll render the template. So first, to calculate the interest, what we need to do, we need to first set a value of interest. This will equal our total result times the return rate in decimal form. So we'll put some parentheses. We'll do form.cleaned data return rate. And that will give us a return rate key. And we go ahead and just divide that by 100. That will give us that value in decimal form. So 10 will become 0.1 in this case. Now that we have our interest created, we can go ahead and add that to our total result. So our total result will plus equal the interest. This will give us our new total result with our interest from that year. We also want to add this to our total interest value as well. Total interest plus equals interest. So now we have our total amount and our total interest up to this point. Now with that done, we need to go ahead and calculate any additional contribution that we added in our additional contribution field. So we can do this with total result plus equals form.cleaned data annual additional contribution, which is just that form field name right there. And with that done, next we can go ahead and set our yearly results. So we'll do yearly results. And we'll get the key we created. In this case, will be I. And we'll set the interest equal to round total interest, 2. So what we're doing here is we're taking our total interest and we're setting it to this interest value here. But we're also going to go ahead and round it to 2 decimal places. That way we don't have some super long value we really don't want to show. So we'll just round it to 2 decimal places there. Okay. Next, we want to go ahead and set the total as well in our yearly results. So yearly results I, and then we'll get the total. And this will equal, once again, round to 2 decimal places, total result, 2. So what we're doing here, in case this is not clear, every iteration of the loop, this will start at 0. This is our total amount, or our initial starting amount, I should say. We'll calculate the interest, and we'll add it to our total result and our total interest, these 2 values up here. So what we're really doing is these values will change after each iteration. They'll go up to the next year's values. But since we're going to go ahead and overwrite that for every loop iteration, we want to save that somewhere. And we're going to save it inside the yearly results dictionary here. So all we're doing is taking a snapshot of what these values are at this specific time and putting it in this dictionary so we have it for later. That way, at the very end, instead of just getting the total after all the years, we have the total after all the years, but we also have kind of a history of what things were before that for each year. Hopefully that makes sense. That's why we need this value, and that's why we're setting it here. Okay, now with that done, we can go ahead and create our context. So context will equal a dictionary. This dictionary will hold a few different values, years. I'll come back to these. So we'll hold the number of years. We're going to hold our total result to get the final value. We want to hold our total interest to get our final interest as well. We want to put in our yearly results to get the year by year thing here. And actually, looking at this now, I don't think we need total interest passed in. I also don't think I need the year's value either, actually, now that I look at it. I think we should be good without that. So let's go ahead and just pass in just the total result and the yearly results. So all we need is our final total. So we're going to show that here at the top of the screen. And our yearly results to actually populate our table. So inside of our total result here, this will be the final value in total results. Pretty straightforward. So what we can do here is just put round once again to make sure we have rounded 2 decimal places. Total result, comma 2, close off the parentheses. Our yearly results will just be our yearly results variable as well. So that's all we need here to make this template work. Okay, perfect. Now the final step after all of this is kind of a mess, but hopefully this all makes sense. All we need to do now is go ahead and just render this template. So we need to make sure we put this back one indentation so we don't put this inside the loop. Then we'll go ahead and return render requests, pass in a template name, result.html, and then pass in a context here. Okay, so this context value will be these values right here, and this will be our template that we need to create now. Let's go ahead and create that template now. Inside of our templates here, we'll create a new file. We'll save this as result.html to match that name we passed in there. Once again, we want to go ahead and inherit from our base templates. This will be extends calculator / base.html. And then down here, we can go ahead and do block contents. And then we'll go ahead and do in block content. Okay, so now with that set up, let's go ahead and build this template. And once again, I'll add Bootstrap here in a little bit. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and just not put any classes and just build the HTML out, making it look like it will need to be to put in the styles in the classes later, I guess, if that makes sense. So I'll create by creating two divs. And then inside of here, I'll create an H1. And this will be investment results. And then below this, I'm putting H3. And this H3 will show the total result. So after blank number of years. So once again, we'll put in a template variable here, and we'll pass in number of years. I actually don't think I put that in my context now that I think about it. I did not. Let's actually add that real quick. So number of years. This needs there for that H3. So we need to put number of years. We'll cast it to an int. Or I guess we don't need to cast it to an int. We'll just put form.cleaned data and pass in our number of years value that the user typed in. Okay, now we have that value. We should be able to use that in our template. So we'll come back here and we'll do number of years. So after number of years, and we'll add years right here, comma, your investment is worth $sign. Then put two color braces. Once again, put it in a template variable, and we'll do total result. That's the total result value passed in our context. Now let's go ahead and stop here and just test this out and see what happens. So if we come back here and we reload this page here, we put in a value 100, 10, 100. Let's put this to 10. Hit calculate. After 10 years, your investment's worth $1,853.12. Okay, so that's all working just fine. The only thing is here, let's go ahead and get rid of this 0.0. That way it just says 10 years, not 10.0. And so the reason for that is because we passed in just this value, and this value was a float field, so it's going to put a decimal point at the end by default. So we could round it, or we could just cast it to an int. So I'll just cast it to an int by wrapping this whole thing inside of an int function there. And then we come back here. Let's now run this again. So we'll do $100, 10 years, 10% return, 100 additional contribution. After 10 years, there we go. Okay, so now we have that thing fixed. Let's go ahead and build out our table now. So to build this table, it should be pretty simple. We'll use a Bootstrap example template, a Bootstrap example table, I should say, to build this. So we'll create a div, and I'll add the styles in a little bit, and then we'll put a table inside of here. And then we'll do a table row, and then we'll do a table head, scope equaling column, and then we'll do a year, close that off, another table head, scope, call, and this will be interest, close off that, create one more table head, the scope of column again, and this will be total. So we're just going to put our year, our total interest up to that point, and our total dollar amount with our principal and our interest combined in the third column. And actually, I forgot to wrap this around in a table head. We would want this to be the header of the table, so we'll put this inside of a T head. We'll cut this out here, and we'll put that right there. Okay, perfect. The indents. Okay, save that. Okay, now with that done, we'll create our table body next. So we'll do a T body inside of here. We want to loop over each value inside of the year results and put it here. So to start, let's go ahead and create one simple row. Make sure this all looks right, and then we'll go over the loop next. So we'll create a table row. We'll create a header for that row. In this case, it will be a scope of row again. And this will be the year, I guess. So we'll just go and hard code in 1 for now. Now we don't want a table head again, we want a table cell, so we'll do a TD for that. And this will be our interest, so we'll just type interest for now. And then below that, we're gonna put a TD again for another table cell here, and we'll do the total. Okay, so this is how our table should look. We have a heading with our 3 headers, and then we have our body with our data here. Let's go ahead and make sure this looks right when we run it. And then if it does, we'll come back and we'll add in our loop to actually put our real data in. So we'll come here, we'll run this. Once again, we'll do 100, 10 years, 10% return, 10% contribution. And now there we go. So we have our 3 headers right here. Then we have our 1 row right here. Okay, now let's go ahead and actually loop over our values inside of our year results. So inside our views here, we have this 0 results value. That's a dictionary. Let's go ahead and loop over that, get our data, and put it in this table. So the way we'll do this is Django has some built-in for loops inside of their templates. So what I can do is outside this table row, because we want to put a new row on every iteration, so the for loop needs to go out here. We can do a for key comma value. So we'll get our key, which is the year, and our value being our interest and total dictionary, and that's set to the value, in yearly results dot items. And then down here, we will do in4. And now inside of here, what we can do, we can put our template variables in for these different values. So key is the year, so we can put just key and key right here. For the interest, it's the value.interest. So once again, template variable, there are 2 clear braces. We'll do value.interest. And then finally, for our total, once again, it's value.total. So just value.total. And these values are coming from these right here. So interest and total inside of our other results. When we do this loop, we get the key. In this case is this, and our value, which will be a dictionary with this and this. Okay. Now with that in there, that should be it. Let's go ahead and just save this. Come back here. Run this again. Once again, do 100, 10 years, 10% return, 10% or $100 contribution. And there we go. So now we can see how it builds up over the years to our final one right down here. Okay, great. So now we have all of our data working and it all looks right. Let's go ahead and just make everything look prettier. So I mentioned Bootstrap already, and we're going to use Bootstrap. We're going to use Bootswatch to get a special kind of theme for it. So I'm going to go to bootswatch.com, and if we come down here, you can see all these different themes you can use to make things look a little different. Feel free to take whichever one you want. For me, in this example, I'm going to use this Cosmo theme here at the top, this one right here. So you can get an idea of what it looks like by clicking on it and seeing all the different components here. To actually use it, what we can do is on this drop down here, we can open up min. Let's do this. Let's take bootstrap min CSS, open link in a new tab. And this is our URL right here for it. It'll give us all of this. So I can copy this URL. I can come back to my base template. And under the title, I can put a link and put an href and paste that in there. So it's just our HTTPS, bootswatch.com, 5 Cosmos, and then our min.css file. We can save that. Let's go ahead and just stop my server here, rerun it. And then we come back here, just do a Control-Shift-R. Actually, we'll just come back here and run this again. I don't see it showing. I forgot to add a rel equaling style sheet after that. Okay, so you need to put our href and also rel equals style sheet. Let's stop the server. Rerun it. Come back here. And there we go. So now by just refreshing the page, you can already see a big difference in some of the fonts and sizing and everything. So we know that the style sheet's being loaded correctly now. Now if it's loaded, let's go ahead and actually make this look much better. So let's start by just kind of cleaning up the positioning of stuff, and then we'll come back to the form after that. So inside of our index.html code up here, we can start adding in some different Bootstrap styles. I'm not going to go too in depth on Bootstrap styles for this video, but I'll go over them briefly as I write them out. So first we'll create a row, a Bootstrap row, and we'll add some margin to the top of 5 to give us some top margin. Then inside of a row, we need to add our columns. In this case, we want just one column. On mobile screens, we want it to go all the way across the side of the screen. On medium screens, though, we want it to only go up half the screen. So column-md.6 will make it take up half the screen on medium screens. Then we'll add some margin on the x-axis on medium screens, so mx-md-auto, and that will center it in the middle of the screen. This line here, H1 is fine. Our form is fine for now. We'll fix this here in a second. Now let's go ahead and work on our button. So we can add some classes here. So do a class equaling btn to add our button styles, and btn as primary just to make it the primary color, which is that blue color. Okay, now with that done, let's go back here and rebuild the page. Now you can see a big difference. We have our top margin. It's centered. Well, it's not centered inside this component here, but the size of it's right here, and it's centered over. So it's not centered because the size of the container is bigger. It's just is left aligned. But once we fix our form, this should look much better anyway. So for now, this is fine. But now we should have everything looking better for this page minus our form. Our calculate will take us to the next page. Let's go ahead and work on adding those styles next. So inside of here, we'll go to our result.html. And a lot of these styles are going to look very similar except for our table. So the first thing we'll do is add a class of row and a margin top of 5. And then down here, we'll add a class of column-12. So once again, mobile screens all the way across, column-md-6 for medium and above, half the screen, mx-md-auto to center it on medium and above screens. H1's fine, the H3 is fine. On this div down here, we want to add a little more padding from our text from the top of our table here. So add a margin top -5. Our table, we need to add a class of table. That might be it. I think that might be it. Let's go ahead now and save this and see what this looks like. So we go just refresh and do 100, 10, 10, 100. And there we go. So this looks really good already. We have our investment results. After 10 years, your investment is worth that much money. And here is our table. So this page should be about done now. Let's just add our back button real quick. And then we'll fix our form. So the back button will be pretty easy to do. What we'll do here is at the very top, outside of our row here, I can add a tag, and this will be a link, but we'll make it look like a button. But this link will go to that index route we created. So I talked about a while back, beginning of this video, this name value here. We're going to use this index name here to reference our URL inside of this template here. So I'll do URL and pass in that name index. And this will take us back to the index page, and it'll be a GET request, so it'll just show our form again. It'll take us back to that first step. We'll add some classes here, and I said I was going to make it look like a button, so we'll make that happen now. So we'll do a class of btn-outline-primary to make it a blue outline button, and a margin top of 3 and a margin X on the X-axis of 3 as well. And then we can go ahead and put in our text, go back, and close off this A tag. Okay, looks good. Now, if I rerun this page here, just do this again. 100, 10, 10, 100. Now we have this go back button. Click on it. It takes us back to our investment calculator. Okay, perfect. So the only thing left to do is fix our form. Now, since we use a Django form, I'm going to go ahead and use Django Crispy Forms for this. Here's the documentation. and we can install it, and we'll use the Crispy filter in this example. So to install it, we can run pip install Django Crispy Forms. I'll put a link to this in documentation. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, come to our terminal, stop the server, paste that value in there, run that, install it, then we can go ahead and run our server again. Now with that installed, we can follow this documentation here. What we need to do is add it to our installed apps. So now inside of settings.py, below our calculator app here, I'll add, what was it? It was just Crispy Forms. Yes. Add Crispy Forms to add the Crispy Forms tag, right? Or add the Crispy Forms app to our application. Now with that done, we need to go ahead and add our template pack. Since we're using Bootstrap 5, we want to go ahead and install Crispy Bootstrap 5 and then add this as well. So you can see down here, I'll put a link to this in the documentation as well, or in the description as well. But we need to run this line right here. So we'll come here, we'll stop the server, we'll run that line there, install it, server again, come back, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy this line right here, Crispy Bootstrap 5, come back to our code, and add it right there as well, and save that. Okay, so I have Crispy Forms added, and we have our Crispy Bootstrap 5 template pack added. Next thing line we need to add is this Crispy template pack and set it to Bootstrap 5. So we'll add this in our settings.py at the bottom. I'll put it right here, I guess. Crispy template pack equals Bootstrap 5. And now that should be all the setup we need to get this working. So we need our template pack for Bootstrap 5. We need to install Crispy Forms as well as Crispy Bootstrap 5 to make this all work. Now with those things installed, there's a lot of different ways we could actually implement this in our file here, but I'm going to do the easiest way possible. And that will be loading in the Crispy filter tags. So load Crispy Forms tags. And then instead of form.asp, we can add a filter. And Django has different filters built in. You use a pipe to do it. We're not going to go too in depth on that, but in this case, we have another filter with this tag up here available to us called Crispy. We can add it right here. Save that, and that will make our form look much better. And there we go. So now I refresh the page, you can see how much better our form looks. It takes up the entire width, and they look much prettier than they did before. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test this one more time. 10, 10, 10, 100, and there you go. So there's our final result. We now have a working little calculator here that calculates our investments total and puts it out year by year, showing our interest and our total amount, including the interest and the principal right here. And so that is it for this video. Hopefully that's helpful with getting you up and running with a basic Django project. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any suggestions on any other future videos, let me know. But other than that, that is really it for this video. All the links will be in the description below, as well as a link to the code if you want to take a look at that. But that is it. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.